Out of all the psychedelic compounds and spiritual practices, only one has this level of high consistency of encountering autonomous entities. It's DMT, obviously. N,N-dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, often catapults users into an otherworldly dimension that defy conventional explanations. These encounters can be enlightening, terrifying, or mystifying. But who or what are these entities? And if they're real, what are their intentions? Are they just a product of our imagination, or is there a deeper pattern here? And can we use DMT to transform in a meaningful way, or at least learn more about the nature of reality? Or is the DMT world just a delusion? Realer than real is an often used phrase to describe these experiences. What does this actually mean? Let's explore. Common descriptions of the DMT experience include inordinate complexity, hyper-technological, hyper-dimensional, highly intelligent entities, lucidity, and familiarity. So before we begin, let's clear up a massive misconception about DMT and drugs in general. Many believe that drugs generate experiences within your mind. But in reality, especially with psychedelics, they unlock parts of your brain that give rise to experiences already dormant in human consciousness. Drugs are like keys. Your brain chemicals are like keyholes. The key doesn't magically open up new realities. It opens up the door, blocking you from accessing realities that were already there. DMT functions primarily by mimicking serotonin, a key neurotransmitter, and binding to serotonin receptors, especially the 5-HT2A receptor. This binding changes the way the brain processes information and can alter perception, emotion, and cognition. There's a reason why many who dare to venture into the DMT world inevitably utter the words, "I've been here before." It's like, I know this is technically my first time here, but I just get this overwhelming sense that I've definitely been here before. This happened to my friend who smoked DMT for the first time, where he traveled to a parallel reality, as he claimed. He had this overwhelming instinct that took over his body that told him, "This isn't your first time here, mate." And I don't think this is a dream state, because anyone who's experienced dreaming or the DMT breakthrough trip will all agree that these two have a very distinct quality. So what does this say about the human ego? The ego is a bottleneck of reality, so that we can navigate this social matrix. It's like the CEO that manages all the various personality structures within us. Carl Jung viewed the ego as the center of the field of consciousness, providing a sense of continuity and identity. But it is not the entirety of the psyche. Without an individual sense of self and a limited scope of shapes, sounds, and ideas, it would be impossible to be a functional human being. Homo sapiens would not have survived, because instead of perceiving the saber-toothed tiger as a separate predatory threat, we would have been tripping balls seeing fractals, perceiving no difference between us and other, and getting eaten from the asshole up. That's why traditionally psychedelic use was always tied in with a cultural ritual experience with an elder and a community, where they do it in a safe environment, because psychedelics lowers your boundaries and makes you vulnerable, which is exactly why set and setting is of utmost importance. When the ego lets go of control, the geometric and social structure of reality collapses. It's like peeking behind the veil, and peeking behind the veil can also show you the overwhelming infinite nature of existence. What we experience as waking consciousness is only the tip of an unfathomable reality, and perhaps under the surface includes autonomous entities waiting to say hi. This is the question indeed, my friends. What are some plausible explanations of autonomous DMT entities? The etymology of the word autonomous comes from the Greek root word auto, meaning self, and nomos, meaning law or custom. Therefore, autonomous literally translates to having one's own laws, implying self-regulation according to one's own laws or principles. Three distinct perspectives on the DMT experience include: number one, these are just hallucinations. 2, these are collective unconscious structures. 3, these are alien intelligences within an external reality. Psychologists would likely say they are archetypical projections of the collective unconscious. This is the Jung lens. Some neuroscientists believe that DMT entities are merely hallucinations caused by an unusual brain activity or random neural firings that the brain organizes into coherent images and presences. So basically it's just brain noise that the ego tries to extract meaning from. Others suggest reality is structured like a digital code or computation. Psychedelics, particularly DMT, are viewed as technologies that can access, decode, and manipulate this digital framework. The spiritual view says that these entities are actual spiritual beings from other dimensions, hidden from normal states of consciousness. DMT entities are intelligent and autonomous beings that exist in a hyper-dimensional space. This perspective claims that these entities aren't just mere hallucinations, but have an actual reality and presence to them.
Psychedelic entities are autonomous fragments of psychic energy that have temporarily escaped the controlling power of the ego.
In other words, these entities are like pieces of your mind that have slipped out from under your usual self-control. These entities are independent from our conscious will and operate beyond our normal waking consciousness. Terence suggests that these entities may be part of ourselves, our fears, desires, or other psychic elements that remain under the radar of our ego's control. When the ego's usual boundaries dissolve under the influence of DMT, these fragments can manifest vividly, gaining a form and a voice. The notion that these entities have escaped the controlling power of our ego points to the idea that under normal circumstances, our ego filters and interprets our perception of reality. It helps maintain a sense of order and continuity. Psychedelics like DMT temporarily weaken the ego's grip, allowing a flood of raw, unprocessed psychic content to the surface. This can explain why these experiences often feel more real than reality itself, presenting novel perspectives or insights that are not accessible during regular conscious states. It's difficult to know exactly what the nature of these autonomous entities are, especially considering we can only compile subjective reports of individuals. But assuming everyone is telling the truth about their DMT trips, it's not far-fetched to say that there is some level of a shared reality between these experiences. Maybe there is this independent reality that we tap into, kind of like turning the radio frequency to a specific channel. Maybe DMT is an alien technology to communicate with other beings. Within the subjective lens, when you enter a psychedelic realm, you are literally going to another place, a similar place that others can confirm with their experiences. This is the mind-blowing thing about DMT. I don't think it's that much different than going to Machu Picchu and reporting your findings. Yeah, I went to this high-altitude mountain with crisp air and a fresh earthly aroma. I encountered this archaic city compiled with these ancient stones. I saw this astronomical clock surrounded by small indigenous people chewing on green leaves. And someone listens to this report and goes, "Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been there too." The main difference with the DMT world is that you can't take a picture and show people. You only have your words. Hey buddy, I wonder if cats can just pierce through these other realities. Anyways, this is Felix, everybody. I just love him so damn much. Rick Strassman, the author of DMT, the Spirit Molecule, which was the catapult to this whole psychedelic research renaissance, conducted a study where he gave intravenous DMT to willing participants. The results at the time were unexpected. Strassman estimated that a whopping half of the participants in his studies of high doses of DMT reported experiences of alternative worlds, and that contact with alien beings or entities were a variant of this category. The most popular descriptive words for these entities in this particular 2020 study were being, light, spirit, alien, helper, angel, elf, religious personage, plant spirit, fairy, chemical spirit, animal spirit, clown, demon, gnome, monster, deceased family member, and the devil. 2% for that one. The most common emotions linked with these DMT experiences were joy, trust, surprise, love, kindness, friendship, fear, sadness, distrust, unreactive, disgust, anger. The common ways in which entities communicate are silence, which is complete unresponsiveness from the entity despite their visual presence. It's like watching an old school Charlie Chaplin movie. You can see everything that's going on, but there's no vocals. 2. Partially defined incoherent speech. So speech resembles words but lacks real meaning, carrying only a vague emotional intent. I guess this would be like going to a different country where they speak a completely different language where you don't understand nothing of. But you can kind of feel the vibe and emotion that they're giving out. Es como si yo hablo español ahora y tú no entendí nada que estoy diciendo, pero tú podías entender un poco de mis emociones. 3. Fully defined incoherent speech. Speech consists of clear words but lacks grammatical structure and overall coherency. So an entity's talking to you and you can kind of pick up a few words, a few phrases here or there, and it might not even be like them talking in English, but they're communicating with you and your brain just interprets the kind of vibe, and you can kind of pick up a few things, but not everything. 4. Partially defined coherent speech. Speech is mostly coherent with understandable words and some grammatical structure, though it occasionally slips into gibberish. So I guess this is kind of like me talking, and then I continue to, and you can kind of understand what I'm saying, you know what I don't know, I'm just making up shit. 5. Fully defined coherent speech. At this highest level, speech is completely coherent with fully structured grammar and clarity matching the speaker's intellect. So hopefully it is how I am communicating with you right now, with clarity. Most people who have experienced DMT don't usually rush to jump back in. It's just not one of those experiences. It has that kind of anti-addictive trait. Not including ayahuasca, I've had maybe 5 or 6 DMT trips, and most of which were distinct experiences, except for maybe 2 or 3 where I went to the exact same place, which I'll get into in a moment. So the first time I smoked DMT, I shot through hyperspace and saw complex fractals. My second and third time I smoked DMT, I did encounter some familiar entities such as the Buddha and Pegasus, which was weird, and also this Jamaican pirate lady with dreads. And with these entity encounters, I didn't necessarily communicate with them. It was more of a visual feast and maybe some kind of emotional tones that were getting through for sure, but no coherent communication. It wasn't like the Buddha went to me, remember the 4 noble truths. Number 1, existence is suffering. You know, it wasn't any of that. The next few times I smoked DMT, I traveled to the classic DMT Jester realm, where I encountered not so nice entities, which I'll get a little bit more into in the DMT entity types. Or if you want to see a trip report of this, go check out, I don't know, just DMT trip, your mate Tom, Jester. Outside of just scratching my curiosity itch and maybe opening my mind to, oh my god, there really is another reality out there. So I guess in that sense, it definitely opened up my mind, but it didn't really help me in any transformative aspect. It didn't change my personality, it didn't make me a better person, even though I thought it did at the beginning, but looking back, especially after the afterglow effect subsided, it didn't really. And I know that for some people it definitely has helped them. I mean, I can't deny people's claims. Only you can be the judge of that. So I can see from a scientific exploration perspective that DMT can be quite valuable, especially if they are technologies to accessing other reality. But I don't believe it's the best substance for, let's say, healing trauma or getting your shit together or reaching actualization. If you particularly want to use psychedelics for personal growth, then the best ways is honestly to find a mentor, get a coach, therapy, exercise, develop your skills, be useful in society, eat healthy, all this kind of stuff. Like, it's all basic kind of stuff, but just because it's basic, for some reason most people don't really do it. I think especially if you're prone to finding shortcuts and escaping reality, then psychedelics can be a little bit of a trap into making you believe that, oh no, this is helping me, this is helping me. And again, sometimes it does, but I'm just saying it doesn't for everybody. If you're tenacious enough to integrate this experience, then it can be very valuable for sure. Now we're going to go into the meat of this video and probably why you clicked, which are the main types of entities that people encounter. Comment below which ones have you encountered if you've had the DMT experience. Entities can take any form, but subconscious archetypes are present and commonly include humans, shadow people, bodiless super intelligent humanoids, aliens, elves, animals, giant spheres, and it just goes on and on and on, right? But I've compiled all these different sub-niches of entities that people commonly encounter during the DMT realm into the main archetypes. And each of these main archetypes, of course, branch out into subcategories. So the first entity, one of the most famous, are the Jesters or Tricksters. Some would consider these guys to be the threshold guardians, the gatekeepers. so to speak. Common in psychedelic experiences, these entities are known for their mischievous behavior. They can play tricks or present puzzles to the experiencer, often leaving them with more questions than answers. Like I said earlier, I've had a few encounters with these bastards. They kind of mess with you, perhaps giving you the middle finger and laughing maniacally at your petty human problems. The environment is like a cartoonish demon-esque carnival with black and white checkerboards. Giving into the fear is like showing you're afraid to angry dogs. They smell that shit and will come after you even more. If you see past the cosmic joke, breathe through it and become confident and grounded in your own being. You'll zoom right past these f***ers. Remember that the trickster archetype is an immature shadow pattern. They have no real purpose and tend to project their insecurities to others by dragging them down. That being said, they do have their place, like deflating puffed up egos. But besides that, they aren't really going to give you any real guidance or insights besides reality is a cosmic joke, which is like, okay, now what? Which I think the main message that these jesters want to convey, if they want to convey any, is don't take yourself so seriously. And I think a lot of us go through life with this puffed up ego of self-importance. And yes, I am superior than you, I am intelligent, and I must show off how smart I am or how strong I am. And it's like, yeah, of course, don't shy away from your strengths in life, but don't be a dick about it. Julian Palmer told me, who's the inventor of Chang'e, he believes that the jesters are the gatekeepers, basically. That's like a test from getting to the higher levels. So if you breathe through it, don't let these bastards scare you. And because at the beginning, I definitely allowed my fear to take over completely. And that could have been remnants of my Christian upbringing, where it's like, oh, maybe this is a demonic realm. And then if you start putting those thoughts into your mind, oh, demons are scary, devil, and it just grows and grows and grows, and it gets worse and worse, you know. So you gotta relax, dude.
I encounter self-transforming elf machine, which are creatures, entities. They're made out of syntax driving light. It's the defining characteristic of the true DMT flash. I mean, it is not subtle. These things mob you like badly trained Rottweilers. They come bounding forward by the dozens, by the hundreds. They jump into your body. They jump out of your body. They are friendly, but play rough.
Most common machine elves include all little people type entities such as imps, elves, gnomes, leprechauns, etc. Often described by users, these entities appear as small elf-like beings that seem to be working on something incomprehensible. Terence McKenna popularized the term machine elf, noting their playful nature and intricate activities. So Terence said, quote, "During my own experiences smoking synthesized DMT in Berkeley, I had had the impression of bursting into a space inhabited by merry elfin, self-transforming machine creatures. Dozens of these friendly fractal entities, looking like self-dribbling Faberge eggs on the rebound, had surrounded me and tried to teach me the lost language of true poetry." Unquote. James Kent suggests a simpler explanation for machine elves seen during DMT experiences. He believes that DMT disrupts how we process visual information, leading to chaotic interpretations driven by intense visual noise. Since humans naturally lean towards seeing human-like shapes, we might perceive humanoid entities in this confusion. In these moments, our imagination becomes more active, making us interpret internal thoughts and sensations as if they were coming from outside us.
There are definitely entities on the other side for me, and there seem to be such for many, many other people.
Some users report seeing entities with reptilian features. These include characteristics associated with reptiles such as scales, elongated faces, or clawed limbs, often presented with an otherworldly twist. Reptilian entities can appear menacing or imposing, contributing to a more intense and sometimes unsettling experience. They often interact with users in ways that can be perceived as authoritative or dominant, sometimes challenging the experience's fears or preconceived notions. Some of these encounters can push individuals to confront their deepest fears and reconsider their place within the larger tapestry of existence. And it makes sense if you look at just normal reptiles in nature. They don't have that mammalian emotive warmth that we do. And if you study the reptilian part of the human brain, this is associated with instincts and survival. Some would say that these reptilian entities have this guardian or protector role, and others would say they have more of a malevolent nature. These are typically described as resembling insects, often with a high level of intelligence and advanced technologies. They are sometimes seen as operating controls or engaging in behaviors that suggest that they are caretakers or architects of some kind. The most common insectoid being that people report is the infamous praying mantis, which is usually a giant figure performing some kind of neurosurgery. However, similar to reptiles, insectoids appears in many diverse ways in terms of their form and intent, farming for emotions. Perhaps this could be like a grey alien UFO encounter, where they're kind of anal probing you, but instead in your brain. So who knows? For a moment, let's just pretend that these really are alien intelligences from an external reality. I think it's important to remember that just because an entity may appear friendly, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have good intentions, just like humans. But some would believe that these insectoid beings have more of a neutral stance, not particularly benevolent or malevolent. These entities appear more human-like, but often possess extraordinary features or emanate a sense of advanced wisdom or spiritual authority. They can range from ancestors and spirit guides to divine beings. And I think the classic alien category would fit into this, whether you're talking about the grey aliens or the Palladians or any of these sort of humanoid-like figures. Humanoid entities typically resemble humans in form, but often possess extraordinary features or attributes that set them apart, such as unusual skin colors, additional limbs, or ethereal qualities. Users often report engaging in detailed conversations with humanoid entities, receiving advice, or discussing existential topics. Some report that humanoid entities show them visions of past events or potential futures, helping to provide context or understanding of life's trajectory. My mate Jared Wright, the creator of Big Les Show, has had quite a few of these type of experiences, so check out the Your Mate Tom podcast if you want to know more about that. Some users encounter beings that resemble traditional descriptions of angels, radiant, often winged, and exuding peace or profound love. They are typically described as being deeply compassionate, offering reassurance, comfort, and a sense of unconditional love. These entities are probably more of the high vibe interaction, assuming they're not one of those biblically accurate angels with like 1 billion eyes and a terrifying presence that makes you go blind. Sometimes the entities encountered are not humanoid at all, but are complex, shifting, geometric shapes that seem alive and imbued with intelligence. Communication with geometric entities typically involve non-verbal, often telepathic interactions, conveying complex concepts and emotions. So I've definitely come across these type of entities where you're kind of going through hyperspace full of fractals and complex geometric shapes that don't have this humanoid form, but clearly hold some sort of an intelligence. But who knows, this could just be a complete fabrication of the human mind. Some entities seem specifically focused on healing, whether it's emotional, physical, or spiritual. They might perform surgeries, cleanse auras, or remove negative energies. In the ayahuasca world, it's very common for people to perceive these little beings kind of jumping on your body and kind of digging out all these traumas and doing surgeries on you. And who knows, maybe this has something to do with people getting healed from physical ailments. Personally, in the ayahuasca realm, I have perceived quite a few of these helper therapeutic entities where I would see these ethereal beings kind of like putting their arm around even other participants in the ceremony. Like they might be like throwing up and crying, and they're kind of like, yeah, they're there. They might bring you a bucket and kind of help you move through these emotions. I've had a similar experience with high dose of mushrooms, which is very similar to DMT, where I would perceive this tribal shaman-esque figure with those kind of like, I don't know, sage feathers or whatever, where they'll kind of go blow this smoke on you and kind of help you move through these troubling emotions. I've even had experiences where you hear Icaros, these sort of primordial songs that they might sing to you. And depending on the experience, sometimes these songs can bring up shit and you're like, oh, okay. And you kind of, feels like you're going on a roller coaster ride, but just on pure emotional, and could even have this purgative effect, whether it's through tears, throwing up, or in the case of ayahuasca, shitting yourself. Even though these challenging experiences can be tough on the body and the mind, usually afterwards you tend to feel a bit lighter, you know. These entities often appear as combinations of various animals, displaying characteristics of multiple species in intricate and sometimes fantastical designs. Many would describe these entities as guardians or guides, protecting the user or leading them through the psychedelic journey. For example, it could be a jaguar spirit that kind of takes you on a private tour of the Amazon, but from the animal's perspective. And with all these DMT archetypical categories, it doesn't necessarily box in whether it's malevolent or benevolent, right? Not all cats and dogs have the same personality. Some are much more affectionate and kind, and some are mean and rabid. Based on my experience, encountering plant spirit entities seem to be more common with ayahuasca, and I found this to be true with any organic plant medicine psychedelic. Like me, many have experienced encountering the plant spirit essence of the substance that they're taking. Mother Ayahuasca is a classic example of the archetype that represents, I guess, this psychedelic plant, and seems to have certain themes about saving the earth and being connected with nature and healing yourself. Or sometimes Mother Ayahuasca can give you a beating. You've been a naughty boy. Wah, wah. And then it's like, okay, here. I think this is why intuitively many, at least traditionally speaking, associate a gender and a personality to each of these plants. You know, the stern father of Boga, the wise grandfather of Wachuma. Maria Sabina would call magic mushrooms los niños, the children. Ayahuasca is Mother Ayahuasca, or some would say Grandmother Ayahuasca. Peyote is like the crazy Mexican uncle. And some could argue that these preconceived cultural notions does affect your subjective experience of these psychedelic journeys. Plant spirits could appear as trees, vines, flowers, or more abstract but still organic forms that are richly detailed and vibrant. Many times they impart ancient and profound wisdom about life and nature. And a common side effect with interacting with these plant spirits usually comes with a unity with nature, which is a heightened sense of connection with the environment. Think Hindu deities like Shiva, or Greek mythology figures like Zeus. Some even encounter Jesus Christ. These entities often resemble gods or goddesses from various mythologies and religions, who carry a majestic and powerful aura. Typically, they impart profound wisdom or cosmic truths, often related to the nature of existence and the universe. These deities are rich in symbolism, reflecting deep spiritual, cultural, or personal significance. These gods usually command respect and attention, often taking a central role in the experience. These gods and goddesses encounters usually lack the chill factor and are quite grand in energy levels. Encounters are usually marked with a sense of awe and reverence. These entities are usually like the managers or the bigger bosses, if you want to call it that. And I know that language typically tends to fail trying to paint these experiences, but shit, man, it's all we got. But if you look at some cultures like the ancient Aztecs, they were taking mushrooms and God knows what other psychedelics and summoning these mythological deities. And in some cultures, these deities ask for sacrifices. Maybe this is even what they talk about in the Bible and other religious scriptures, like Baal. And of course, we're just going from the assumption that these are real, at least for this segment of this video. But let's not forget that there are some deities who asked some of these ancient indigenous cultures to, hey, sacrifice a virgin, will ya? And I'll give you riches, and I'll help grow your crops. And the people were like, oh man, really? Do we have to? Yes, okay. He's a virgin. Throw it into the fire or chop their heads off, or what, I don't know, whatever it is. This is just one really extreme example, but I gotta at least touch on it because I don't want to just think, oh yes, all these entities, they impart wisdom and they help you with your personal growth. I think that's a very kind of narcissistic way of thinking about these things, but again, it just depends on how you go into it. I didn't want to get dark here, but if I'm going to be talking about entities, I gotta kind of tackle it in all these different angles. And this of course leads us into demonic entities. Demonic entities are typically described as sinister beings, and these can take many forms such as shadow figures, devil archetypes, or monstrous foes, or freaking Baphomet, I don't know. Whatever you perceive to be demonic or evil entities. Could be a Lovecraftian type entity, like Cthulhu. The only demonic entity that I've personally experienced, there was one on DMT, but it didn't have a visual. It was more of an overwhelming sense of dread and malevolence, but its voice came through my voice, right? Really weird. I've talked about this before, so you can check out the trip report. And then I've had one on ayahuasca, my very first ceremony, actually. To me, I perceived it to be all the evil and dark energies of the universe compiled into one being. Some could describe that as Satan, I don't know, but it wasn't the red skin devil horns. Any form of demonic entity usually manifests in these dark, unsettling environments, and feelings of dread and sheer terror can take over your entire system. And of course, if you give in to these fears, then it will just grow and grow and grow and grow and grow even more. Because I've also had some other experiences where dark, shadowy figures would start to appear, and then I would start to let the anxiety build up in my mind, and then I just kind of let go and breathing through it and not letting it get to me, and then those shadowy figures would turn into these beautiful rainbow butterflies and flowers. Sometimes it could be a test, but then I've also heard some other stories. Very, very, very rare, but I've been to a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies in the Amazon, and they always talk about stories that every once in a while someone legitimately gets possessed. They might strip naked, scream, have this demonic scream, or even try to hit other people in absolute nightmare situations. Some people have even stabbed another participant. Imagine that, you're tripping on ayahuasca and you get stabbed by a psycho next to you, you know? This sucks because I really don't want to like talk about the extreme dark aspect of it, but if we're going to be talking about DMT archetypes, I have to at least touch on this. Personally, it's never been that bad for me, and those who I've personally encountered who have had really dark encounters, maybe even going to the depth of hell, they might even be a little bit scarred afterwards, but then you check back on them a few months later, maybe even a year later, they claim that it was transformative and it was actually more beneficial than all of their positive trips. Not saying that you got to go chase bad trips, of course, but what I am saying is that if a traumatic experience happens upon you, psychedelic or not, the healthiest way to deal with it is to just accept it and take responsibility for it. Even if it wasn't your fault, but to dwell in this victim mentality, like, oh, I'm messed up now, it's just going to take you on a really dark downward spiral. So even though these experiences can be intimidating, encounters with these entities are frequently interpreted as symbolic challenges, forcing individuals to confront inner conflicts and unsolved traumas. Such experiences can lead to significant personal growth, as individuals often gain. I tend to have more of a Jungian perspective on this, and I think that these demonic entities tend to manifest from our shadow. All of our deepest, icky insecurities and fears and anxiety, maybe secret desires that you've been repressing. Like I said, these dark, challenging experiences account for a very small percentage of DMT users. Sometimes they can produce long-term challenges, which the user believes an entity has latched onto them, causing them severe problems like emotional instability. And some people from fundamental religions such as Islam or Christianity, and even some indigenous tribes, believe that all psychedelic experiences open you up to a demonic world in which formless entities are desperate to enter a physical vessel to control you like a puppet. And listen, I'm not unempathetic to these perspectives because I've had my fair share of dark trips. I also had that religious upbringing, but I think in those earlier years I was much less mentally and emotionally developed. I held a lot of anxiety and fear just around life in general, so it was no wonder that sometimes I might tune into the oh, that's the demon channel, and then I'll get stuck in there. I didn't have a trained mind, and I didn't have the proper tools to deal with it. It's like a video game. Sometimes if you venture off into unknown dark territories and you go too far, it's like, oh, all these villains and enemies are like way above my level, and you get devoured. But I truly believe it depends on the foundation of your mind. My mate Felipe, he's like the happiest person in the world, super positive, He doesn't get into these freaking dark realms. He's had decades of experience with this stuff, and he's never had that level of an experience. It's because his mind, his foundation, is already on a very positive level. Whereas if you have this genetic predisposition to schizophrenia or mental disorders like bipolar or severe depression, or you're naturally a very anxious type of person, or you have a dark or weak mindset, then yeah, it might not be that difficult for the DMT channel to take you to a horror movie. And I believe that the DMT experience is a broad spectrum, and it can take you to many different levels of the human experience. Like Ram Dass said, your downs turn out to be more interesting than your highs after a while, because it's showing you where you aren't. For obvious reasons, it's difficult to conclude the genuine nature of the DMT experience. Yet there is a significant consistency between these individual experiences. Science explores every crevice of the physical world, both macro and micro. It pushes the limits of outer space, but it's still at its infancy of mapping out the inner space, which is both within the universe and our minds. As good old Terence once said, "We have been to the moon, we have charted to the depths of the ocean and the heart of the atom, but we have a fear of looking inward to ourselves, because we sense that is where all the contradictions flow together." It is important to note, of course, that all of these DMT experiences are based on subjective reports. And you could argue that this doesn't hold much empirical scientific weight, especially considering phenomenology isn't science's cup of tea, if you know what I'm saying. But moving aside any objective claims of what the purpose of DMT might be, like any tool, it ultimately depends on how you use and integrate it. It's like a hammer. You can use it to build a house, as a weapon to protect your family, or to bash your own skull in. With DMT, many report transformative experiences, helping them break down their ego structure to become a nicer person, while it can have a detrimental effect on others. Some may even get further deluded while claiming they're enlightened as their life stays in shambles. Integration is always the key. If we just leave it in the abstract and never integrate it within reality, then it remains an abstraction, it remains a dream. But whether DMT entities are mere hallucinations, archetypes of the collective unconscious, or aliens from an external reality, it doesn't change the fact that they can be valuable experiences for some people. I think the first two perspectives are probably more plausible, at least from the scientific lens, while the third, alien theory, is the most speculative. But what about you? What do you think? Comment below. But who knows, maybe the materialists are right, and DMT entities are just simulations, fabricated by brain chemicals. But to be fair, from this lens, you could also argue that love isn't real, it's just oxytocin. But good luck keeping a long-term healthy relationship by telling your partner that love doesn't exist. It's just chemicals, babe. This isn't real. It's just my biochemistry wanting to breed with you. Human beings care about stories and emotions more than facts and data anyways. Besides, two seemingly opposite paradigms can exist at the same time. Love can simultaneously be a transcendent experience as well as physical chemicals. Life is a paradox, after all. So don't fall into this dialectic trap of either or paradigms. That's not how reality works. It's difficult to trust our senses painted by our subjective lens. So I don't think we can say for certain that our DMT experiences are accurate representations of what's out there or in the mind. But I also think it's foolish to disregard the DMT experience entirely. Regardless of how you personally feel about DMT, you cannot deny they hold valuable information of how the human brain and mind functions, and perhaps even the nature of reality. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. It took me a while to put this script together and edit this bad boy. But if you do enjoy these kind of videos and want to support our work, check out Patreon, follow me on these socials, and sign up to my email list. Or watch this video, or do this or that. Anyways, catch you later.